welcome to the Metapod Podcast, Pokemon podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. It's another day, another dollar. It's a Thursday podcast this week. Sean and I had a little bit of scheduling, traveling. I was traveling and stuff, and Sean has a real life,
You'd think with those long weekends, Jake, we would have more than enough time to record, but it's the opposite, where we're all booked up.
What we were actually doing is, because Pokemon tends to release news on Tuesdays after the podcast, this is actually a ploy to try to get more news on this week's episode. And to be honest, we have a lot of good stuff actually on this week's episode. It kind of coincidentally worked.
It did work out, because also if it hadn't been for this, I think we would have been a little light on the news front this week.
Well, it would have, yes, the news front, the new information. We would have still had to talk about Melbourne, yes, right? Because that was last weekend. Melbourne Championships, 528 players. We'll get into that later, because there are some incredible results from that, in my opinion. But Sean, you know what
it is. We got a 5-star review, Jake.
We have a review that we're going to read out to you all. So if you enjoy the podcast, let us know, whatever platform that is, whether that's Apple, you can leave a rating and review. Spotify, leave us a rating. It helps out a ton. YouTube, leave some comments. We'll actually read a YouTube comment next week.
Oh, nice.
I think. So leave us your comment on there. This 5-star review, though, comes from Shed's Season. A great podcast is the title. 5-star review. It's very short and sweet, actually, about this one. Great podcast, and keep up the good work. Done like dinner, Sean.
Thank you, Sheds.
Thank you very much. And if you are on your way to leaving a review, maybe you could stop by the Pokemon Presents.
Yes. Here, let me load that up. I was about to say you got a lot of cards on your side table there, but we'll talk about that later.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I do have a lot. I've been trying to clean. But anyways, the Pokemon Presents is happening here soon. Usually we don't talk about the Pokemon Presents, because when does, Pokemon Presents really ever talk about the Pokemon trading card game? If you don't know what it is, it's basically a live stream announcement video that the Pokemon company will play. It usually is like announcing the next set of games or DLCs in the video games, or different things like that. It's Pokemon Day coming up Monday, February 27th. So here in just a couple days, as this podcast airs. So something to watch if you enjoy Pokemon. Maybe you want to know the exciting things coming in for the future. Starts at 9 a.m. Eastern time, Sean. So set your alarm, wake up early.
I mean, I'll be awake at 9 a.m. Eastern, but our West Coast brethren and folks are probably, I don't know. If you're really into Pokemon, wake up at 6 a.m. for this one if you're on the West Coast, but otherwise I think you could sleep in and catch it on YouTube. So
I know plenty of people that could probably do that, although for me, I just, if that was me, I would just wait. I would just wake up and then watch, the highlight video or something, or the video that they post afterwards, not the live stream. But another reason I wanted to talk about this is because in a previous week, we talked about the Pokemon trading card game. The original Game Boy game is coming on the Nintendo Switch. So that didn't have like an exact release date yet, I believe. So I'm curious if this Pokemon Presents, my hot take of the Pokemon Presents, my hot guess, is that maybe they give an announcement on a release date for the Game Boy game, as part of extra content that you can download as part of that.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense, right? Because like you said, they sort of teased it at the end of like a Nintendo Direct, and no other details were given. So again, that's why we wanted to talk about this one this time, because it might actually have trading card game related information. I think other speculation is that there's no DLC for Scarlet and Violet that's been announced just yet, and at this point it would make perfect sense to announce DLC that would be dropping in the fall for Scarlet and Violet. So that might be a part of it. Something Jake and I actually we're speculating is that maybe they will announce the dates for the World Championships in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense. Because I mean, the World Championships, that's the big dog, and it makes sense on the Pokemon Presents that they would, announce that, because it's the combined of Pokemon Go, Pokemon video game, Pokemon TCG, and I believe as of right now, I just kind of Googled it. It just says that the event is going to be in Japan. So I know they've been messing around with a lot of dates in terms of events and things like that. We'll actually talk about some of the official dates that released here in a little bit, but yeah, the 3-day event, I mean, it would be the perfect time to announce the dates for that for players, so you can start booking your flights to Japan, Sean.
Yeah, indeed.
I'm also curious if this Presents may talk about Pokemon Live release date, because we're still in beta. So I mean, we've already talked about on the podcast the sunsetting of PTCGO. Whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing is up to your own opinion and discretion, but
I mean,
they're going to roll with it, whenever they want, because they're Pokemon. But I'd be curious.
My gut says they won't. And the reason for that, Jake, is that I think Pokemon Presents, it's always still run from the Pokemon Company Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And TCG Live is not a Japanese
That's true.
game, right? It's not a thing for the Japanese market. So my guess is that will not be a part of this.
That's actually, yeah, you know what? Yeah, throw my idea out the window. Go with Sean.
I'm just thinking, like, hey, if working in corporate America has taught me anything, it's that, region locking your content like that and separating it out by, international and regional things is like definitely not complicated.
It is definitely something, but if you want to talk about regions, not necessarily region locked because anybody can participate, maybe you want to take a trip to North America, the beautiful, wonderful, greater Columbus, Ohio. The 2023 North American International Championship location and dates were announced. It's going to be in Columbus, Ohio, as it has been in previous years at the Greater Columbus Convention Center. TCG Go, VGC, and Unite all be present over there. They've done this before. This will be, I think it's the same place as it was
the last 3 or 4 years.
2019.
Yeah.
2019.
Yep, and 2022 as well.
Yes. So it's the same old, same old. It's a beautiful venue, in my opinion. I think it's a really good place. At least I went there as a spectator in 2019, and I had a ton of fun over there, and I didn't even compete in the event. So that'll be a ton of fun. I am trying to look the official date for the North American International Championships, June 30th through July 2nd, again in Columbus, Ohio, at the Greater Columbus Convention Center. So if you would like to go, set your calendars, etc. There is that. Also, just because it's up there in the screen, April 14th through 16th is the European International Championships. So EUIC, if you want to take a trip across the pond, for the Americans at least, there's your spot to go.
Yeah. And I will say this one, they did note in here that they changed the location a little bit within the convention center to halls A and B, which adds about, 33% more space than it was in previous years, which, useful because when you have 1,500 people in the Orlando Regional Championship, like who knows how many people are going to be attending NAIC.
Yeah, I mean, that's the trading card game alone that was 1,500 players, and since 2019 when I went there, they added Pokemon Go and Unite, I believe, as competitions for that, and it was pretty packed in there. I mean, it wasn't like there was a open space really anywhere, so I'm glad that they've moved over. Maybe they learned in 2020 that they need to spread it out a little bit.
It's like you were saying, I think a lot of people are excited about A lot of people like Columbus. I think there was some trepidation given the recent
There's a
train
lot of
derailment.
people. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are memeing about Columbus, Ohio, which is well deserved for Columbus, Ohio. But at least we know like it's going to be a well-run championship.
Yeah.
I mean, people do want to go new places, myself included, right? But like at least it's a place that you've been to before and you know is going to be good. We don't know the cost of attendance as well. If you don't remember, Pokemon's been upping their registration fees as of late. $70, I believe, is the highest that it's been. So who knows with an IC if it'll be more, be less. I'm sure we'll find out soon. Signups will happen soon, and you'll need to sign up immediately.
Jake, now
Yeah.
I got to know from you, that date, June 30th to July 2nd, does that put it within the wheelhouse of possibility for you?
I mean, I don't want to pencil anything in because literally anything can happen.
Sure.
I don't want to pencil it in yet in this industry, but June 30th to July 2nd, I might not be there on the 30th. I think I have a wedding to go to that day, actually, now that I think about it.
The 30th is probably
it's like a Friday.
Yeah, is it a Friday? Yeah, 30th.
It's either a Thursday or a Friday.
Sunday. Yeah, you're right. It's a Friday.
I think either the 30th or the 31st, I'm at a wedding. But
well, if it's the 31st of June, then you are living in an alternate universe.
Wait, 30th through July 2nd. How many days are in June?
30.
30?
That's why I said
30.
the 31st of June. You are living in some alternate universe.
Yeah, it's been a long week.
Yeah. But, the reason I ask is because I know with your sports job.
Yeah, college athletics is no sport. Nobody's in school that day that competes in sports. So as of right now, it looks good, but stuff always pops up. You never know.
Okay, well, no promises, but like one day, Jake, for our audience, no, we've never actually met in person.
Yeah, fun fact, we never.
So we might have to we got to find one time for a wild Metapod to appear.
We will. Don't worry. One day. But Sean, one day a new League Battle Deck is going to be releasing. And if you want to train up for the North American International Championships and up your game, Sean and I, we love these League Battle Decks. We think they're actually really, really good. And this new one that was revealed is actually quite unique in its own right, in my opinion. This is Origin Form Palkia V-Star, the new League deck that was revealed. It will release on May 5th for $30. Now, Sean, have you opened up a League Battle deck?
I have, yeah. I actually got I got the Mew VMAX because I was like, I finally was like, you know what? I'm going to build Mew. Let's just do it. And I actually bought 2 of them because they were the level 2 League Battle decks, which only have a 2/2 line.
Yes. So if you don't know, the League Battle decks come in like levels. They each box has its own like level. So there's level 1, and in level 1, I believe it's like you get 1 Pokemon V.
Yeah, typically.
In that. In level 1, and it's usually just a single deck. I believe the Zeraora and the Deoxys ones are level 1. But there's also then level 2, which could be 2 Vs, whether that's 1V, 1V max, 2 Vs.
It's usually, I think, 2 V maxes or V stars nowadays. Like, I'm thinking like the Mew VMAX one was a level 2. And so it had...
That was level 2 or level 3?
I'm pretty sure... I don't know.
Because you got Genesect, Mews, and Mew VMAX in it. I think you got 2 of each.
You might be right. It might have been
I think it was level 3.
Okay.
But anyways, there's also level 3, which, as we were alluding to, gives you like 6 premier Pokemon, I guess is the premier Pokemon cards. And this level 3 Origin Form Palkia V-Star League Battle Deck is kind of cool in its right, because it gives you 3 Origin Form Palkia Vs, 2 Palkia V-Stars, and 1 Radiant Greninja. So there's 6, cards, 6 super cool cards, I'll call them. in this box, and it's a 3-2. I mean, the Shadow Rider Calyrex is a 3-3 VV Max, but this, adding a Radiant Greninja, this is the first Radiant to appear in these League Battle decks, I believe.
Yeah, and that's what's cool. Oh, you're right. The Mew VMAX is a level 3 as well. They have it down here. I think the cool thing about this is, again, props to the people at the Pokemon Company that are designing these products, because they recognize, like, hey, we could just make it like the Calyrex one, right? Put a 3-3 line, call it a day, whatever. But they realize that, no, you don't really need 3 V-Stars in a Palkia deck, especially, like, nowadays. You might need a 2-2 line at most. So, like, we'll fill that other slot with a useful card that you also want on the field. That's your Radiant Greninja. So, I don't know. Really, really cool there.
We don't know the official deck list yet, at least in this PokeBeach article where we're getting this from. We don't know the list that's going to be in this Palkia League battle deck. But, like, as Sean was alluding to, noting that, Greninja is a Pokemon that gets paired with Origin Form Palkia V-Star, and you usually don't use more than 2 of those in a single game. It's cool because if you look at, like, the Mew VMAX battle deck, right? We talked about how they gave you a 2-2-2 of the Mew VMAX and Genesect Vs. Nice to give you different Pokemon Vs. Not just Mew giving you Genesect, but also putting other Pokemon in, like Meloetta. There's 3 copies of Meloetta in there.
Yep.
Oricorio, you get a playset of VIP passes. Cramomatic is in there. So, like, they really think about these League battle decks and how they can be competitive, how, they can help someone learn the actual game. And that's, again, we say this every single time, but that's why I love these so much. They're so good.
I will be interested to see what this deck looks like, because this deck comes out after rotation happens.
Yeah.
Right? And, like, Palkia for the longest time, and I think even still kind of, is using that Inteleon engine to, like, get you the item cards that you need, etc. So it's interesting that this was the one that they chose for after rotation, knowing that those cards, like, it would be weird for them, I think, to sell products with cards that have rotated. So yeah, this deck list has got to be a little different.
And it comes out in May.
Exactly.
Like the beginning of May. Isn't rotation like March?
Yeah, rotation is mid-April.
Mid-April. So yeah, I mean, you're right. I didn't think about that until right now. Well, actually, I think when they started transitioning from theme decks into League battle decks, you remember, like, the Pikarom and the ADP ones. I think when one of those came out, either the Charizard and Reshiram, the Pikarom, or the Arceus Dialga Palkia deck, I think one of those came out after rotation.
That might have been. I could see the Pikarom maybe having come out after rotation.
One of them did. I can't remember off the top of my head which one it was.
I don't know. I still think it's interesting, because I know that they already did an Inteleon engine deck way back at the beginning of Sword and Shield too.
Yes.
So it would be weird. No, it's not that weird, but it would be a little odd to include the same set of cards. And to be honest, the people that design these products, I know they designed them pretty far in advance, but I imagine they would have known that rotation was coming. I don't know. I'll be interested. Point being, I'll be interested to see. Hopefully, fingers crossed, they have designed it such that, the deck will be playable for somebody who buys this in standard format. That would be ideal. But, it may have been that this was meant to release earlier and they sort of held back the product for a bit. So who knows? Who knows?
I will say, even Ian Robb's deck, the Palkia deck, it included the Inteleon line, the Shady Dealings, Quick Shooting Inteleon line. So, I mean, even iterations now in the Silver Tempest format, still having it. So, I mean, it'll be good, right? I guess I don't really know how to say if it'll be good now or not. But
it's a weird thing. I was just speculating. I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't think I've seen a version of Palkia that doesn't play the Inteleon engine. How are they going to do that?
The Vikavolt, right? In the you play the Vikavolt.
Well, they didn't throw Vikavolt in this guy. Can you imagine? That would be a wild League battle deck.
That would actually be really cool if they had, like, two different types of Pokemon like that. I mean, they kind of did with Mew VMAX, and those kind of fit, but like, what are the more obscure decks
you know what
that
they should
come
do,
in?
Jake? And this is a challenge. If anybody at the Pokemon Company listens to this podcast,
make a Reggie League Battle deck.
No, take one of Sanders' decks and make that a League Battle deck.
Oh God, no! They're like let him top at Worlds, and then do the Worlds decks. Which, by the way, the World Championship decks I believe come out like March 4th. So coming up, those are also some really good decks that you can get.
And word on the street, I might have to like get me one, because word on the street, somebody at one of my locals his deck is the one that got printed, one of the 4.
Okay.
So like, cause he was like a seniors. He was a seniors player who like got top something. I can't remember his name. I need to look it up. But when they said the name, my brain at my locals was like, oh, that I feel like I covered their deck on the podcast. So I might have to, be my like fanboy out and be like, hey, can you sign
Sean's famous.
I'm not famous. No, this human is famous. This human has their
Sean knows famous people.
Oh, well, I mean, sort of, but very niche fame. But still.
But anyways, the League Battle deck list will come out closer to release as they usually do. So, Sean, but sometimes you may be a player that wants to grab the top deck lists that compete in the Play Pokemon Tournament series. And so one of the events that happened that you can grab your deck list from is Melbourne. The Melbourne International Championships, or the Oceania International Championships, went on this previous weekend. As I mentioned, 528 players in Masters in the Silver Tempest format. Sean, Azul Garcia Griego winning his second IC of the year.
Oof.
What deck he do it with?
What deck he do that with? He did that with Lost Box, and it is a Lost Box deck that plays the Dragonite V, which is something that I sort of have it built kind of prior to this, but there's a few differences here. So of like new cards that like I haven't seen necessarily in Lost Box, or like it's just a little bit interesting. You've got the Dragonite, right? He did opt for Drapion, because I know that's kind of a thing. I feel like Lost Box has been back and forth on that, like whether or not like.
Well, I mean, with Fusion Mew, right? If Fusion Mew becoming a little bit more popular, you can't do your Sableye damage placements, things like that, to be able to rack up the energies on the Mew VMAX, and plus they just do the thing, the leap into the deck. So Drapion just says GG's.
Well, yeah, it's like, okay, I need 3 prizes. Let's get those 3 prizes out of the way, and I'll figure out the rest later.
One of the other things, so instead of saying 3, you can say 4. Or with the Dragonite, if you're whacking a Pokemon V, you can get +1 on top of that because of Sky Sealstone.
Yes.
Sean, is this one of the cards that you were going to mention?
Well, yeah, that was one of the cards that's like also interesting and new. So this card, is this a Crown? I think this is a Crown Zenith card, right?
This is a Crown Zenith card, yes.
Yeah, so not a lot necessarily came out of that set, but this one was an interesting one. You can give one of your Pokemon for, 1 turn, the ability to, ADP it up, to take an extra prize on a knockout of a V-Star or VMAX. So it doesn't work against regular Vs, so you can't turn like a Genesect into a 3-prizer. But from a math perspective, you can turn that Mew into a Super Mew. So you can make it so you only need to take 2 knockouts for the win.
Just to clarify, this card, this item card, this tool card, right? It can only be attached to Pokemon V, because it's basically giving a regular Pokemon V a V-Star power. Yes. So it's not just, so that's why the inclusion of Dragonite and Drapion is really cool. because now you have two Pokemon that can use this Sky Seal Stone instead of just one. But yes, during this turn, if your opponent's active Pokemon V-Star or active Pokemon V-Max is knocked out from damage from an attack from your basic Pokemon V, take one more prize card.
Yep. It's a
And
cool little inclusion.
It just says from your basic Pokemon V. So it's almost like you could use it on, I'd have to get a will post ruling, but it sounds like to me you can get this on the Dragonite, use it on the Dragonite, but then take the knockout with Drapion.
That is interesting because it doesn't say from this Pokemon V.
Yeah, it just says your basic Pokemon V.
Oh, that is just how it reads. So like,
I have no reason to believe otherwise. Yeah. Unless Will Post says something.
Okay, that's really interesting. I mean, I guess the question is like, you might be in a situation where you have the tool in hand, but you don't have the Drapion maybe. So you got to throw the tool down onto the Dragonite. Again, go find the Drapion. I could see that being a thing, but so yeah,
you do play several capture energies in this list. That's an easy way to find them.
That's true. That's true. Outside of that, like it's your common Lost Box thing. You've got like the 4 Comfies, 2 Sableye, going for, keeping the Cramorants around to do that ping, like that, like small damage.
Just initially. That beginning damage, that setup damage, because you only need 4.
Well, and you also think, right, like Cramorant, you get 2 hits with Cramorant, that knocks out a Genesect. You get 1 hit with Cramorant and a Sableye, that'll knock out a Genesect. So, like, it's that sort of 1-2, that wombo combo. You got Radiant Greninja.
Sets up prizing, especially maybe if you go Cramorant into Zero Aura. Yep. This deck opting for Zero Aura instead of the Kyogres. We know in previous Lost Box lists that Azul played, they were the team that he had, the group that he was testing with was playing the Celebrations Kyogre, the one that did a bunch of damage to the bench when you discard energy.
I think the problem with that card, because I was playing it, don't get me wrong, it's a great card. It's a great finisher if you can set up damage correctly. And it did win me a game against Mew when I played it, because like, you come out of nowhere, you've taken like 2 prizes, end of the game, you can be like, yeah, I'll take 4 prizes on 2 of those Genesects, thank you. I don't even need to deal with your Mew VMAX. I don't worry about your Mews. But the problem with Kyogre is it's only useful in the late game. And
at that very end, because you use it when you have 5 energies in your deck and only 5 cards in your deck, and then you just womp for 250 wherever you want.
Yeah,
on the bench.
So like you can be in situations where like maybe you comfy into it early and you kind of feel like, oh crap, I have to keep it because that's my game plan. Or you have it in your hand at a weird time and you're like, it can be really awkward. So I do see like the value of the Zero Aura, because you can hit for weakness against Lugia, you can hit for weakness against Palkia, doing effectively, what is this, 220 damage after weakness. So
and then Choice Belt.
Yep,
it's an extra 60 damage. That's 280.
Yep,
right,
exactly,
and then it takes a knockout.
So the Zero Aura here, really clever. You can sort of play the game more on your terms with that Choice Belt. And you can do it more than once with Zero Aura. Like the Kyogre is like you get 1 attack with that, and that's it. That's the whole game. Whereas the Zero Aura, to your point, like you could do it once, you can bring it back, do it again later. If you're, ordinary routing it back into your deck.
I will say, Pedro Eugene, or Pedro, what's Pedro's?
Pedro
Eugene Torres.
Yeah.
Did play this deck also in the event and got 6th overall, but had a little bit of differences. Played the Zamazenta, the new Zamazenta from Crown Zenith, the one with Retaliate, doing that extra damage there.
Yep. That is
also
interesting.
It's pretty, I like it. I mean, it helps you with trades, especially one prizer when you play like boss's orders or something.
Yeah.
To be able to, or escape rope to bring up a Pokemon V that may be on the bench. The Zamazenta could get the KO, right?
Yeah, which is nice. You don't have any, it's hard to find like one prize. attackers that can,
Mhm.
without weakness, just take out a V. So
And so there you go. The Zamazenta can do that. Also the Snorlax. People love the thump and snore Snorlax.
that's true. You can throw that down. Does he have so the
Well,
Snorlax
it's
does
kind of
180, but it
it
doesn't.
does 180, which is pretty good for some trades, but also with unfaced fat prevents all effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to this Pokemon, so you can kind of stop a little bit Sableye.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, and Azul had that in the list as well. So it's
Hmm.
definitely it's a little risky because you fall asleep and then you got to flip 2 coins. Obviously,
Although I don't remember who it was, but somebody during this tournament hit like two heads. I think it was like 2 out of 3 times
oh my
they hit double
gosh,
heads. Quite literally, like, oh, well, not literally statistically impossible, but pretty close.
that's that's insane. So yeah, but so Azul rocking the Lost Box, and I think it'll be interesting to see, once rotation happens, like how things shake up. But
Hmm.
for the most part, like I'm looking at these lists and like I don't know if anything like does this, yeah, that stays in format. The Zero Aura is gonna rotate, yeah, but I mean whatever. That's like one
That's fine.
one
You just find
card.
a new, electric Pokemon.
Exactly. Like I think everything in here, the Orangaroo. The Orangaroo is gonna rotate. The monkey is gone. But again, it's useful, but not it is actually it's quite useful if you have a specific energy in your hand that you need to use Mirage Gate on.
Hmm.
So, it has more value than I think it shows, but still, outside of that though, like so much of this list is unchanged. You do lose Ordinary Rod, which is a big thing for these lists.
Hmm.
Um, However, I'm sure that there are other cards. You have Energy Recycler.
You
There,
still, yeah, you still have that.
yeah. Energy Recycler, I'm pretty sure stays around. It's E. So,
Hmm.
so I think
You've
the
also got
loss.
Clara as well.
You do have Clara, which it's just a porter for turn, which is not always ideal. But like, yeah, you do have Clara if you need it. There's I'm sure other cards that are either going to be printed that will do similar things.
Hmm.
You do lose Scoop Up Net. So I think for
Which is a
me,
big part.
yes, that's going to be a huge challenge for this archetype in its current form.
Hmm.
Because getting that comfy loop going super fast is it's like when Jirachi lost his skateboard, right?
Yeah, it just
Um,
made it real tough
yeah,
at
like you
times.
could make it work, but it's difficult. But all that said, I do think that Lost Box. I say this every pod. Lost Box is already like people are doing testing with some of the new cards, and Lost Box still is a broken idea.
It's
So
still good. The Lost Engine is still quick, still powerful, Sean.
I feel like that Lost engine is going to be like the welder engine of the next year and a half.
Hmm.
So,
It really is.
Jake, what other lists? Anything else that stood out to you as like, okay, that's interesting, that's cool, or whatever?
So we know Reggie Gigas, right? There were a
Uh
couple of
huh.
Reggie Gigas. I mean, I don't need to. We
We
don't
don't
need
need to
to
look at
really
it.
talk about those. I just want to say Reggie Gigas did get 4th place overall. Rahul ready jumping from his friends. Reagan Retzloff. We talked about part of his friend group in the testing. Reagan played Lugia, got 2nd.
Mhm.
Sam Chen also 9th playing Reggie Gigas, but there was one Reggie Gigas that ruled them all, Sean. Go
Mhm.
to place number 45.
So wait. 45th place
Shush,
ruled.
shush, 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 shush. You'll know
Okay,
what I'm talking about.
we
You'll
won't
know
we
when you
won't think
see it.
about this. We won't talk about that. Okay.
This Reggie deck stole the show at the championships, the OCIC, because this Reggie Gigas deck, this Reggie deck
Uh,
played Radiant Jirachi, Sean. And I think that it's actually not that much of a meme.
I mean, look, I think we talked about this card when it came out. You flip two
We
coins.
did.
If both of them are heads, your opponent's Pokemon is knocked out.
Yep. For a
Ah,
double colorless, so the
mm-hmm.
twin energy works.
Yep.
2 capture energy works on it. But Sean, it's also a really cool Pokemon in its ability as
Ooh.
well. So you mentioned the attack about knocking the active Pokemon out. And let me tell you, the person that did play this deck, shoot, what was their name? Peter. Peter played this deck and was telling people, you know, it's really hard to beat Goodra anyway, so might as well give it a shot. So, I mean, there you go. The go ahead knockout. You don't have to worry about any healing. But the ability, I think, is what makes this card actually make sense in this. The ability, Entrusted Wishes. If this Pokemon is in the active spot and is knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, search your deck for up to 3 cards and put them in your hand, then shuffle your deck. If you go first, right? I mean, think about it. Think about it. You can grab a bunch of Reggies. You can grab Energy, Research, Ultra Ball, Heavy Ball. This list specifically was playing a Zinnia's Resolve, Sean. So one of the biggest things about Reggie decks at times and the struggles is getting Aurora Energy in the discard pile. Think about if you get Jirachi in the active, it gets knocked out. You can grab Zinnia's Resolve and 2 Aurora Energies, and then boom, you can discard the 2 cards from your hand and draw a bunch of cards. I mean, assuming that your opponent has played a bunch of Pokemon, because this format has a ton of Pokemon on the bench most of the time. So that's a really, really cheeky combo, in my opinion, that, I mean, in my opinion, just took Radiant Jirachi by storm. And also it flipped 2 coins a lot on the stream. It flipped it a couple times. So it also took some knockouts in the stream series that I watched against Gustavo Iwata. And they were laughing, having a good time on there because it was so funny and so crazy. It was a good match, both from a holistic perspective of Pokemon, but also because Radiant Jirachi was freaking sweet to see in a Reggie deck.
That I really like that. That ability is just great in general, because there's a lot of weird cards that can stop or can make it very difficult for Reggie. And I think some of those are Duraludon VMAX, because its ability, if you have any special energy attached, it doesn't do any damage. Or Flying Pikachu VMAX. Also can be really awkward. And, you know, that Radiant Jirachi, if you just throw that up in the active and be like, okay, knock it out, whatever.
Yeah, like you probably have a bad matchup against like Duraludon and Flying Pikachu, like you were saying. So like just put it up there and see what happens. You play 4 Ordinary Rod. Like, what's the worst thing that could happen?
Well, also, my point also is, like, it gets knocked out. You can go get the pieces you need to get around the problem, right?
Yeah, the
so, like,
Path to the Peak, Escape Rope.
Yeah, so like the Flying Pikachu, you can go grab Escape Rope Boss. And then, like, so it hit you. Okay, Escape Rope goes to the back. You can now hit through it. You boss it back up. You knock it out with Lecky. You know, you take your 3 prizes and you say, what now? I don't know. Like, that's really clever. I like that.
It's just so cheeky and so cool. And this is why, I mean, if you're, you know, stale of the format, right? You think this format sucks, whatever. I know some people do. This is just one of those decks, one of those moments that's just like, wow, that's really funny and really cool. Sean, is there any other deck that you want to check out in here?
I mean, I don't know all of them off the top of my head. I see that Cameron Shinoy did get top 16 with Vikavolt. So Item Lock did get a top 16 finish at OCIC, which is interesting, right? Like, you know, I think it's one of those decks that it's always a little bit threatening. There's so much item, you know, item-based decks. Like, you think about Lost Box, you think about Lugia. I think, you know, unless you're like Mew VMAX and you can just always draw your hand up, right?
Well, you can't draw the hand up if you can't use, you know, Battle VIP Pass, Trekking Shoes, Ultra Balls, Cramomatics.
Yeah, so, and especially if a Path to the Peak sticks and you can't draw anymore, oof, awkward.
Oof.
So, like, yeah, this is an interesting one. This one stood out to me. I don't think there's anything particularly special about this Vikavolt list.
I think it's interesting that you have both a Sky Seal Stone and a Forest Steel Stone. I don't know if in this format yet we've really seen a deck combine with both, it's usually like one or the other. So it almost becomes like a matchup specific type thing. You know, if you're facing Mew VMAX, Sky Sealstone on the Drapion and take 4 prizes. And then all you have to do is knock out a Genesect with, like Lightning Rondo, Raikou V, or, with
Or Vikavolt.
Drapion or Vikavolt
Doing
even,
190.
stall them out. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's, or like to the point that we're making earlier, like one of Vikavolt's biggest things is it needs to be able to turn one going second, get the item lock. And sometimes that's a really hard thing to do. Like you need a Melanie, you need a water energy in the discard, you need a Vikavolt, you need to get that card into the active. And so like that Forest Sealstone could be just enough to get you the piece that you need, and then hopefully a path to the peak as well. Then you get all of that out there, and then so it is interesting. Like, yeah, I think it's matchup dependent.
It's really cool I thought it was really clever to include both and see the value in both of those cards per se. But other than that, I mean, I would say it's pretty standard of the Vikavolt list that we've talked about. 2 Raikous, though. 2 Raikous is kind of interesting because usually we just see like one more heavy on the Vikavolts, or, there's an Aerodactyl line in there, the 1/1 Aerodactyl, which the Mew that got top 8 played, by the way.
Of course it did.
Love my Aerodactyl V-Star.
Broken, busted Aerodactyl V-Star.
Oh, yeah. Very, very cool. Love. I mean, just again, love that card. Love it being included in these decks. And it's just, I mean, it really does win you that Lugia matchup.
Yeah. And I will say more and more that Lost City, that Lost City's looking mighty fine for a lot of these
Getting rid of those Drapions. The more Drapions that are around, the more Lost Cities there are around.
Yeah, it's great to your point, great for Drapion. It's also good. Like Lost Box decks tend to play
just Lost Box in general.
Yeah. Like, well, Reggie is also a good deck to have Lost City out because I got rid of your only 2 of this. Like, if you know that, the deck is playing only 2 of the, I don't know, metal one or stone one or whatever, right? Like, just target those 2 down and be like, cool, now you have no ability and no way to ever get it again. Like, that's insane. It's so good. Anyways.
It's pretty nuts. I mean, I think Air's, no, never mind. I was going to say, I think Aerodactyl V also stops, but it doesn't. It doesn't.
Still, it's pretty
because that's just for Pokemon V and V stars. But
yeah, I don't think there's anything else in particular that really stood out for me. But yeah.
I would say not really for me either.
I still think though, given how long we've had basically the same format, the fact that there's any movement at all, and we're gonna be sitting in this format again for another
long time.
Almost
long
2
time.
months, a month and a half, 2 months. Yeah.
I think the not European.
Now,
I think the
EUIC.
final Australian event had a date announcement, and they changed the date or something like that. But it turns out that the Oceania Regionals of Sydney Olympic Park, apparently it's going to be like all in the same format.
Like in this format currently?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, because I think the first event that's going to be in the new format post rotation is EUIC in London, because that happens on April 14th. Rotation happens on April 13th. And that's also 2 weeks after Scarlet and Violet base set drops.
I was going to say, when does that release? And you answered it at the beginning of April.
Yeah. It releases like March 31st or something.
Yeah.
And so you go 2 weeks.
It's going to be an April Fool's joke.
Yeah. So, new EX card, who dis?
New EX cards.
But yeah,
Sean, moving on into the final segment of this. It's not necessarily like a huge crazy thing, but Dead Draw Gaming, for those for people who are not longtime players, Dead Draw Gaming used to be a big time Pokemon TCG team. It's been down for a while because the the whatchamacallit, the pandemic.
Whatchamacallit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we had no events, things like that. And so Dead Draw Gaming has sort of have a revamp now that things are back in business. There's been a shuffle of some of the people in Dead Draw Gaming, like Danny Phantom. I don't know what their last name is, but used to be a huge part of Dead Draw Gaming, no longer is, because they currently run with the Card Coliseum. But Dead Draw Gaming announced the other day that they've officially signed 5 of, quote, the best Pokemon TCG Masters players, multiple regional winners, and multiple current top 25 players. So Sean and I aren't going to sit here and say, like, you know, oh, who's leaving their current team to join Dead Draw Gaming or whatever. But Sean, if you know, no limits on money, no limits on the, you know, limitations of, you know, already on a team, things like that, who would be in your top 5? Who would be your 5 players on your super team if you had to choose Pokemon TCG super team?
Yeah, if I
current players right now.
Yeah, current players now based on, like, I'm gonna say, like, a combo of performance and play style. Like, if you put the super team together to take down any Team Rocket team out there, if you will. So I think it's only makes sense to start with the most recent IC winner, Azul.
Like, I would agree with that. That's also in my top 5.
Yeah, I think Azul is just playing out of his mind. He's very consistent when he goes to regionals and ICs, obviously. And yeah, I think also the platform that he has through his channel, he would be like your kind of, you know, media team.
He's your
captain.
poster child.
Exactly. Yeah. So he is your Yugi. And then the question becomes, like, you know, who's the, not to say that anyone is Joey. Nobody is Joey in this analogy, but you get what I mean. So that's my first. Do you want me to go through all 5 of mine and see where we have differences?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, do that.
Okay. I think the next on my list, you can't leave out the person who has won each international championship. That would be absurd, in my opinion. And that person is Tord Reklov.
I would agree. Tord Reklov is in my top 5 as well. So 1, 2, we're the same right now.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. Outside of that, this is where it starts to get weird. Where I think you actually, like, you gotta, like, look at, like, body of work, but also combine that with how often this person has the opportunity to go to, you know, events. Because I think there are some players that maybe they won't show up the highest on Limitless's rankings, but they're only going to, like, 2 or 3 regionals, 4 regionals at a time in a year. So the next person on my list, it does not fit that mold, is Isaiah Bradner.
Okay.
I think Isaiah, you know, I think he has done really, really well at basically every regional he's played at, for the most part. So, like, if you want the person who is, like, you feel like going into any regional, this human is going to get top 8 minimum, Isaiah is that person. Like, you know, the consistency this season has been insane. The other 2 are the ones where I get into, like, the territory of, like, okay, we're going to mix it up a little bit. The first one I put is Sander. So
Sanders in my top 5 as well.
I know he's in your top 5.
Yeah, he's in my top 5 because, I mean, he takes decks that nobody would ever think of, and he goes in top 8 at these events. I know I think at Oceania he just missed day 2, or no, it was the one before that, because I think we talked about it very briefly on the podcast.
Yeah, it might have been Lille or something like that. One of the other regionals in Europe.
Anyways.
But yeah, Sander is, like, for me, I'm like, he's the best control player in the world. I don't even think there's a question about that now. And he plays exclusively control. So yeah. There we go. And whenever he does go to tournaments, he might not get top 8. Because I think he's weirdly, he handicaps himself by playing such an archetype. Because that archetype doesn't always have the best support from Pokemon in terms of the card pool.
Well, and in terms of time.
Yeah.
If it was like an unlimited round, no time limit whatsoever, he'd probably do a lot better in some events.
You're absolutely right. So yeah, I think that's, like, That's the thing that hampers him. But I would have to put him in my top 5. The last one, this is maybe a curveball. I put Gustavo Wada.
Ooh, Gustavo Wada's in my top 5.
Yeah. So four of
So
our top
4
5
out
are
of 5. Yeah, 4 out of 5. Great minds think alike, Sean.
I picked Gustavo, even though like you don't like when you look at the Limitless rankings and everything, he's not at the very top, but he's a Brazilian player. He does really well when he goes to events, but he doesn't go to nearly as many events as the other players on the list. So I'm like, yeah, to me, I'm like, when he shows up to a tournament, you know that he's bringing the heat. So
I think my 5th, the outlier between our two lists, is actual curveball. You know, you were saying that you were throwing curveballs. You were throwing softballs,
I
Sean.
mean, most of them were pretty obvious. That's on.
They're good. They're very valid. You know, they're very valid opinions. There's a lot of great players right now. My number 5 player that I would choose on DDG right now, Reagan Retzloff.
Okay.
Reagan Retzloff, brand new Caesar, has been killing it this year. Brand new into the Masters scene, right? Killed it as a senior, won so many different events.
Yep.
And he's doing really well. Just got second at this past IC, and I keep seeing his name up here a lot. What regional was it? Just not too long ago where
Florida, Orlando.
You know, it was Orlando also in that top 8, you know, in one of the best testing groups. Probably is in the best testing group of NA, right? With Rahul, Bocardi, Bradner, who's in your top 5, right? So I would actually put Reagan Retzloff, the youth of the crew.
Nice. Yeah, I'm like, I'm looking at his recent finishes since becoming a senior, a master, and he goes 34th in September, 23rd in October, 18th in November, 5th in February at the beginning of the month in Orlando, then 2nd in Melbourne. So I mean, he's bound to win the next.
He's due for a title, right?
Yeah.
And you got to think like 34th, right? Or, you know, it's not top 8 or whatever, but this is also with like 1,500 players, right?
Yeah.
34th among 1,500, like one of the top players of NA right now in this season, and it's his first year in Masters, only gonna improve.
Also, huge shout out to Limitless for all of these statistics.
Yeah, huge shout out for Limitless for helping me make this list, man. Like,
you guys are
it was really
goats.
hard though. It was really hard though in my list to leave off Stefan Ivanov, right? The one who's won
that's the
really last
good
several
point.
North American International Championships. Henry Brand, former world champion, right? Not on our list. Sorry for the lack of Oceania love. Apologies. But like those are some notable mentions as well outside, you know.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
And even players like Rahul, right? I mentioned him earlier as part of the testing group with Reagan and Isaiah. You know, Rahul's up there as well. Grant Manley. I haven't seen too much of Grant Manley in like this season, but before the pandemic, I think Grant Manley had like 7 top 8s.
Yeah.
Like consecutive top 8 finishes at regionals and stuff. So, and that's absurd. So I dubbed him, I think, on the pod as like the most consistent player of the modern era before the pandemic started. So or at least when the pandemic first hit.
There's just a few players. It's wild when you actually look at this list and you think to yourself, like the list that we put together and what I'm looking at Limitless, and you're like, man, there really are the level of consistency of the top players.
And
like
that doesn't even include, like, we haven't even mentioned one of the most winningest players of all time, Michael Premawa, who still plays.
Yeah. And
right?
It's just, I'm trying to see if he's, I don't necessarily see him on the list immediately.
I don't think he's been doing too many events this year. I see him from time to time. He's not really enjoying the format.
I will say the one person we did leave off that she doesn't get the opportunity to go to enough events probably, but Piper Lapine.
Piper Lapine, we talked about, you know, in the beginning of the season when events were coming back and the season was going on, that Piper was killing it.
And Piper, I'm looking at her list right now, and I'm like, last tournament in December, first place. Tournament before that in September, first place. I mean, back-to-back dubs. I don't know how often that's happened in Pokemon.
Yeah, I mean, not very often, I would say. So, I mean, one of the top for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely is in that, like, if we did a top 10
True.
for right now, but I only post top 5.
That's true. That's true. But Jake, that's our Mount Rushmore. And this
Maybe
is the end
next
of the
year
pod.
I'll be on the Mount Rushmore.
Maybe.
Probably not.
Dream big, my man.
Dream big. I did find out there's a locals. Well, it's in Lexington, so still 45 minutes away. But they meet on Tuesdays.
Hey,
So-
every hero's journey has to start somewhere, Jake.
The comeback is coming. You mentioned my cards on my desk earlier. I've been trying to clean up and unsleeve. I have a lot of like half sleeve decks. Trying to unsleeve them to organize my sleeves.
Okay. Organizing sleeves. Love that.
Yeah,
Jake,
trying to
sign
keep
us
them
out.
together. Figure out how many I have 60 of.
Oh my gosh. Take us out of here, Jake. Put us out of our
Anyways,
misery.
this has been the latest episode of the Metapod Podcast, Pokemon podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. We'll be back on Tuesday as usual, but we hope to see you again then. Thank you very much.